So this is the story all about how me, my partner and our cat Dargo said we want to go travel around Europe and out to Pakistan in a van in 2020. The original plan was to leave the UK and head to Russia before cutting across Europe to Africa. We'd then catch a ferry to Italy and then get to Turkey all within about 6 months. Once there, we could decide whether we'd had enough of living in a van and head home, or if we wanted to carry on all the way to Lahore, where Frey grew up and has family living there. Along the way, we were robbed twice, involved in a road accident, got a paint job that resulted in some major repair work, and ran away from a pandemic that forced us to become legal residents of another country. This tale is too long for just one video, so to get the full story, be sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on future installments, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when the next video is up. Because as of right now, I don't really know when that video will be uploaded. It could be next week, or it could be 3 weeks from now. Who knows? You will, if you subscribe and click the bell icon. This first video will mostly be photographs, as a lot of the video footage from this part of the trip was lost, but future episodes will feature a lot more motion in them, I promise. Frey and I met at the end of 2017, and we quickly discovered that we shared a passion for travel and adventure. Frey already rode a motorbike, which was all the push I needed to finally get my licence, and we went on a few trips around the UK on 2 wheels, including the Lake District, a week exploring Devon and Cornwall, and a run all the way up to Glasgow following Frey's favourite band on tour. Come 2019, and both of us were feeling a bit fed up in our respective jobs, and we needed a bit of a shake-up. Frey was determined to arrange for her grandma in Lahore to meet Dargo, but she didn't like the idea of stuffing her in a plane cargo hold for several hours, so obviously the only solution is to drive there. And while we're at it, we might as well make the most of the opportunity and explore the continent a little bit. The idea was initially scary to me, but I knew that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I turned down such an opportunity. In April that year, we started looking for campervans and motorhomes online. We went to see a handful without much luck, with most of them needing so much work that it would almost be cheaper to buy an empty van and convert it ourselves. Then Frey found one on eBay and put a bid in, not really expecting anything to come of it. But she won it, and now we needed to travel up to Liverpool to hand over £4,600 for a campervan that we hadn't even seen with our own eyes yet. We learned that the 2.5 litre 1999 Renault Master was originally a minibus used by the NHS to drive kids around on days out, before being converted into a campervan by a so-called professional company and being used by its previous owners to travel up to Scotland and back a couple of times a year. It had a water tank, water heater, electric sockets, a fridge freezer, propane gas system, a grill with 3 hobs, solar panel, leisure battery, and a toilet and shower. The inside looked a bit like an old person's living room, and the outside had some unique aspects to it, but practically speaking it had enough for us to get going immediately, but we did have some additional work we wanted to do on it before setting off for the continent. The first big thing was the solar power. It came with a 5-watt panel, which we couldn't actually remove because it had been glued into place. But we did disconnect it and added 2 120-watt panels, a 3000-watt inverter, and 2 120-amp lead batteries that could be charged from both the solar panels and from the engine. However, it soon became apparent that whoever had wired up the existing systems throughout the van was clinically blind and was missing several fingers, so we had to rewire everything just so we knew what went where. The fridge, kitchen and water heater were all connected to a propane gas system, which we took to a professional to swap out for an LPG system. LPG is available all over Europe from most petrol stations and is as easy to top up as filling the van with diesel. It's also incredibly cheap, with averages of around 40 or 50 cents per litre, and our 10-litre bottle being able to last us up to 3 weeks at a push. The only minor annoyance is that different countries have different connections on their LPG pumps, but you can buy European adapter kits that will have all the ends you'll need wherever you are. During all of this work, we were slowly emptying our respective homes and loading everything into a storage unit in Coventry, which we also used to keep the stuff we were adding to the van, like the new solar panels. Unfortunately, about a month after we started renting the unit, we came back to find a lot of stuff missing, including our brand new solar panels, most of Frey's motorcycle gear, and other stuff from Frey's house, like boxes of jewellery. There had been no signs of break-in to either the garage or the main gate at the front, so our suspicion is that the previous tenant of the unit had gotten a duplicate of the keys made and tried his luck one day. Unfortunately, the site owners regularly delete their security footage, and it had been longer than that period since our last visit. They didn't believe we'd been robbed based on the fact that they've never been robbed before, but eventually, and rather begrudgingly, agreed to change the lock on the garage door, as long as we covered the cost for it. The last thing to sort out was the paintwork on the outside of the van. We painted all of the gold in black and got rid of most of the stickers from the outside. We also did a bit of redecorating on the interior to make it feel a bit more us. With the van ready to go, we now turned our attention to the cat. Dargo needed her own pet passport and a few tests and inoculations before being allowed to visit certain countries. Most countries within the EU have the same requirements when travelling internally, but they can be more strict with animals coming in from outside the EU, which we were planning on doing on at least 2 occasions. Some of these injections need to be administered twice, with a gap of several months between jabs. All in all, anyone looking to travel with their cat needs to give themselves at least 6 months before leaving to get your little furry friend all ready to go. It's a lot of work and a fair bit of money, and most borders don't really care about the paperwork, but if just one person asks to see the documents, suddenly it's worth all of the hassle. Finally, we needed to sort out visas. Our initial planned route was to head to Russia via Finland and then drive through Europe and into Morocco before driving across Algeria and into Tunisia, then getting a ferry to the south of Italy. Luckily, being EU citizens at the time, we needed no visas to visit any of the European countries. However, Russia, Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia are not part of the EU or Schengen zone. Luckily, Morocco and Tunisia have no visa requirements, so they were no problem. And we learned that it would be significantly quicker and cheaper to apply for an Algerian visa while in Morocco. Russia was a bit more difficult, as it requires a visa that costs £100 and there's quite a bit of paperwork to fill in. You also need an official invitation to the country, which luckily can be bought online for just a few pounds. The people at the visa application office are very friendly and helpful, and they will check through all of your paperwork before you finally submit it. But it does involve handing over your passport for up to 4 weeks, depending on which office you go to. 4 weeks later, we collected our visas for Russia and we were ready to go. The week before we left, we took the van, which we had now dubbed Moya, in for an MOT and full service, giving us the full 52 weeks before having to return to the UK for the next MOT. All that was left to do now was to load everything into the van and drive down to Dover, ready for the ferry in the morning. However, the weather on that final day took a bit of a turn for the worst, so we literally threw everything into the van and carefully drove along the motorways to the coast, planning on waiting for a dry day to pack everything away properly. The first day of our trip started before the sun had even come up. By the time we had boarded the ferry and departed, the sun was out in force. Dargo seemed a bit confused by her first voyage across water, but luckily it was too chilly for us to stand outside for the entire crossing, so she had a quick nap in her carry bag for the rest of the trip. We debarked in Calais and headed straight to our first destination. We were using an app called Park for Nights, which allows users to create locations on a map suitable for motorhomes and campervans to park up or spend the night. We had picked a spot in the woods next to a lake outside of Compiègne, where we had space to empty everything out of the van and load it all back inside with some semblance of order and organisation. Or rather, Frey had space to do that, while I had ample space to stay out of the way while she worked. Our visas for Russia meant that we only had between the 1st and 30th of November to be in that country, and we had also started making tentative plans to meet up with some friends in Finland around the end of October, so we had some ground to cover over the next month. We spent 2 days exploring Paris before heading towards the historical city of Reims for another 2-night stopover on our way to Luxembourg. We quite enjoyed Paris, but the Eiffel Tower was let down a bit by the hordes of people trying to scam you and the surroundings being barricaded off, requiring you to pay to get close to it. But we went to see Notre Dame while under repair and visited the Central Mosque, Sacré-Cœur and the Arc de Triomphe, which was my personal idea of hell. It's a giant roundabout with 12 junctions and no road markings. It's so hectic that apparently normal vehicle insurance is invalid on this bit of road. While searching for an open petrol station late one night, we accidentally stumbled upon Disneyland Paris, and we then discovered the small village of Longpont, with its impressive remains of an old abbey. There are many places all over Europe that provide dedicated, free parking for campervans and motorhomes, which is how we came to visit Longpont in the first place. Almost all of these spots provide bins and water filling and dumping points, but some also provide electric hookups and information about the local area. We came to use these sorts of places a lot over the course of this trip, and they led us to some places that we would likely have otherwise missed. Reims had just such facilities on their university campus, about a 20-minute walk from the city centre. We spent 2 days exploring the city, including the cathedral where French royalty used to be coronated, and an ancient Roman gate called Porte de Mars, which apparently was the largest gate in the Roman world. There was a lot of history in Reims and so much more to see than either of us expected, so we stayed for an extra night just to explore the city a bit more. Next, we were off to Luxembourg, the road to which led us through many old battlegrounds and around the outskirts of Verdun, site of the longest battle of World War I. The roads here are long and straight, and every so often there will be memorials and military graveyards. Our first day in Luxembourg was a bit nerve-wracking as we needed to buy fuel but had no idea what language they spoke here. We had read online that people speak either Luxembourgish, French or German, although we found most people spoke French, which we knew enough of to get by. We also realised that petrol stations in different countries work in different ways. Some countries you have to fill up and pay afterwards, others make you pay before you fill up, and others will do everything for you so you don't even have to get out of your vehicle. And then there's the occasional self-service station to throw you off completely. With a tank full of fuel, we headed up the country to Vianden Castle, which some people argue is a palace, and there's even a video in the museum of locals arguing about whether it's one or the other. Either way, it's undeniably the closest thing either of us had seen to a Disney princess castle, buried in the picturesque surroundings, complete with cobbled streets lining the hill beneath it. The next day, we drove through the many tunnels of Luxembourg on our way to Luxembourg City itself, which was largely under construction, and several other tourist spots were closed due to it now being the off-season, and any places that weren't closed still didn't allow pets, although Dargo did get to explore the city parks a little bit. We were then off to Belgium and the capital city of Brussels. We spent 2 days exploring the city, and on the second day we met up with a friend of Frey's who was travelling through Europe via train at the time. Brussels has so much to see and do, and there seemed to be something going on around every corner in the city centre. However, the biggest impact Brussels had on us was the realisation that we had forgotten all about the low emission zones. Many EU countries have low emission zones, or LEZs, in their cities, which basically restricts vehicles with certain emissions levels from entering unless they pay a fee, with failure to do so resulting in a fine. We realised that the LEZ for Brussels extended out to the city's ring road, which we had naively parked up within. Twice. This left us in a bit of a low mood, realising that visiting city centres would now mean using public transportation. Luckily, most European cities have this sort of infrastructure, with park and rides and metro systems already in place. We downloaded an app called Green Zones that lets you enter your vehicle's emission details, and it will show you the LEZs you can't go into, which meant that most of Europe was a big red spot for us, except for Athens, which was black for some reason. After a couple of days in Brussels building up fines, we popped back over the border into France to visit Lille. The streets of Lille were lined with giant, colourful sculptures of weird animals, which were based off Mexican spirit animals and were part of a joint exhibit between Lille and a Mexican city, with the Lille sculptures on display over there. The next day, we went back into Belgium to visit Bruges, which really is like a fairy tale. I hadn't seen the film at this point, but that night we did watch it and I absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, due to having no form of income for the duration of this trip, we were on a fairly tight budget, which isn't the easiest to stick to in Western Europe, so unfortunately we couldn't try any of the local beers or dine at any fancy restaurants. But we did treat ourselves to some chocolates, because we're only human and it's practically law to buy some while in the country. Next, we were off to the Netherlands, where we managed to visit The Hague, Rotterdam and Amsterdam all in one day, thanks in part to their amazing public transport system. Unfortunately, there is zero surviving footage of this wonderful achievement, or of much else over the next week or so. the reason for which will be explained in the next video, which makes for a good place to end this on a bit of a cliffhanger. Although if you've been paying attention, you can probably figure out the reason for the lack of footage. If you enjoyed this video, please do the usual of liking and subscribing, or even just comment below, that would be awesome. The next video will be out as soon as possible, depending on what challenges life decides to throw at us in the meantime. If you have any burning questions before then, we'll do our best to answer them in the comments, or you can get in touch with us on our Instagram, which is linked in the description below, along with our Redbubble store, which features photographs that Frey took over the course of our adventure, so watch out for potential spoilers over there. Thanks for watching.